So today I have recommendations for the prompt of author's debut, which is one of the March prompts for my Christian fiction bingo that is happening in 2026. Hi, my name is Jeanette, and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. As mentioned, I will be sharing recommendations of author's debut books that you could read to fulfill the March prompt for my Christian fiction bingo. Now, there are two prompts for March, the author's debut, and then the second prompt is a borrowed or a gifted book. Well, I don't know what books have been gifted to you or what books you would need to borrow to fulfill this prompt. You could double up, or you could choose two separate books. That is totally up to you. But because I can't recommend for the second prompt, I'm only providing recommendations for the author's debut books. So I have 12 books, so 12 separate authors to recommend their debut books to you. Then I have 6 books, 6 different authors who are possibilities for me to read to fulfill this prompt. And I do not have any debut books that were gifted to me. So I will have to use this by borrowing a book if I want to double up on the prompt. I do have a couple gifted books that I could read if I want to read one book for each prompt, but we'll see what I'm going to do. Before we get into the recommendations, I just want to give a shout out to Teresa at Creatively Faithful. Her birthday is in the month of March. When I was putting this bingo board together, I reached out to different booktubers and I could not find anybody whose birthday was in March to provide me a prompt at that time. I have since found out that her birthday is in March, so I will link her channel below, and if you want to go over and wish her happy birthday, that would be great. She plays a TBR game and usually a different game every month, and I really enjoy TBR games, so I really enjoy that aspect of her channel. But we also read very similar, so yeah. Okay, now let's get into the recommendations I have for you. Now, I do not own many of these 12 books physically. I actually only have 5 of them physically. So I do have my tablet here to look at them and read some of the descriptions for you. And then I have my cheat sheet with my lists with like little notes. So I have sorted this into genres. So if you're interested in a particular genre, those ones will all be grouped together. And then I've written down when it debuted, when their first book came out. So let's start with contemporary romance. And that book is My Stubborn Heart by Becky Wade. This released in 2012. We are following Kate, who has agreed to go to her grandmother's place in Pennsylvania to help her restore it. So she's taken a little sabbatical from work. And she meets Matt, who is the contractor of the place. He is a former hockey player. And he is carrying some baggage from the past and really kind of keeps to himself. It kind of appears very grumpy. And these two get to know each other, and we start to see a friendship develop and possible romance. There are elderly characters in this who are really entertaining and who start playing matchmaker. And we see kind of faith being discussed quite a bit throughout by different characters in different conversations, and kind of what does God have planned next for their lives. I highly recommend this one. The next book is Until Our Time Comes by Nicole M. Miller. This is a historical fiction set in World War II Poland. We are following Adia, I should say, this one came out in 2024. We're following Adia, who is an American who is working at a horse farm in Poland when the war begins, and she's determined to get the horses out of Poland before Germany invades and does something else with the horses that would not be healthy to the horses or positive to the horses. She is scared that they're going to get killed, and so she is determined to get them out. Then we have Brent, who is a British intelligence officer, or Brett, who is a British intelligence officer, currently working undercover as a news reporter. his and Addie's first interaction doesn't go the best, but then they start working together to try to get these horses out, and we are following them throughout the story. This story covers 7, 8, 9 years. I can't remember exactly from when it starts to when it ends, but a large period of time. And because of that, and because it's only like 370 pages, there are jumps in time and gaps. But that did not take away from my enjoyment of the story. I like to see how things go. I would have liked to see more of the interaction in those missing years rather than just getting a summary, or the missing time periods. It's not full years, but missing time periods rather than just getting a brief summary of what's going on. But I really enjoyed this one, and I would recommend it for historical fiction. And staying in the historical, we've got The Lawyer and the Laundress by Christine Hill Suntz. This one just came out last year, 2025. It is set in Canada, in Toronto. In 1837, we are following a lawyer and a laundress, as per the title. I like that her book tells you exactly who the main characters are. And so the lawyer is a single father with a little girl. And we've got a laundress who is kind of hiding a bit of her past for some reason, and who befriends the little girl, and through that connection gets to know the father, who is the lawyer. This is a marriage convenience story, but the marriage does not happen until a good 60-70% of the way through the book. We really see them get to know each other first, and I really enjoyed that. And this is full of history of Canada, and kind of because this is before Canada becomes Canada. And I really enjoyed getting to know these characters and seeing, why does a marriage happen to begin with? Why do these characters get married? And the political side of it, get to know some of the history. Really interesting. Her research was very well done. The next book is A Tailor-Made Bride by Karen Witemeyer. This released in 2010. It is another historical romance set in Texas in the 1800s. And we are following Jericho, who is the local livery owner, and Hannah, who is the new dressmaker in town. Because of stuff in Jericho's past, he does not trust Hannah and believes that she looks at fashion, she's a dressmaker, rather than the true beauty of a person. Well, Hannah befriends Jericho's sister, Delilah, I think that's her name, and tries to help set her up with a beau. And as that's going on, there's a lot of interaction with various characters, and it just kind of goes from there. And we see Jericho and Hannah really headbutt at times. This is not my favorite Karen Witemeyer story, but it is her debut book, so take that into account. But I just love historical Western books, and yeah, it was interesting to see these characters develop and kind of how they grow and learn to look past assumptions. And there is also a relationship that Hannah develops with an older gentleman who is a widow, who has lost his wife and kind of struggling on his own. And I just really liked that relationship especially. The next book is also historical romance, and that is The Hope of Azure Springs by Rachel Fordham. This one released in 2018, and it says, alone in a strange town, can she find healing for her new home and herself? So 7 years ago, orphaned and alone, Em finally arrived at a new home in Iowa after riding the orphan train. But secrets from her past haunt her, and her new life in the western wilderness is a rough one. When her guardian is shot and killed, Em, who is now 19, finally has a chance to search for her long-lost sister, but she won't be able to do it alone. For Azure Springs Sheriff Caleb, securing justice for the injured Em is just a part of his job. He's determined to solve every case put before him in order to impress his parents and make a name for himself. Caleb expects to succeed. What he doesn't expect is the hold this strange young woman will have on his heart. Welcome to the charming town of Azure Springs, Iowa, where people care deeply for one another and sometimes even fall in love. I really liked these two characters, and I really felt for Em and what she's gone through, and from the time arriving in the town on the orphan train, and now her guardian is shot and killed, and she appears to be a stranger to everybody around her in the town. Like, what? And then the relationship between Em and Caleb and the way they kind of challenge each other, I really enjoyed this book. Okay, the next one is also historical, and that is A Distant Melody by Sara Sundin. This is a World War II fiction, her debut, released in 2010. It is book 1 of the Wings of Glory series. I have read this book twice, and I actually just read it in January, so it is in my January summary video, so I won't talk about it too much here. And it's World War II fiction. We're following a pilot, and we're following Allie, who is home, like on the home front, and trying to follow her parents' wishes for her, but her parents' wishes might not follow God's plans for her life. And I really liked how this started out as friendship and then developed through letters. They really got to know each other. I mean, he's in England, she's in California. And they go through some really tough times and trying to determine what the plan is. But the whole way through, Walt encourages Allie to look for God's plan for her life. And just because her parents want her to do something doesn't mean she's like blindly following them. She needs to do what God wants her to do. I really enjoyed this story. The next one is, now we're switching into romantic suspense, and starting with Secondary Target by Angela Carlisle. This one released in 2024. It is book 1 of the Secrets of Kincaid series. It is set in Kentucky. We are following Karina, who her mother and brother were killed a number of years ago. So it's just her and her father. They moved to Kentucky. She got to know Allie and Bryce, who were brother and sister. And then Bryce kind of disappeared, goes away for a bit, but now he is back in town. The whole time, Karina has been friends with Allie throughout the whole time. Now he is back in town, and Karina seems to be receiving threats, and her father has disappeared. And are these threats connected to the killings of her mother and brother a number of years ago? Like, are people from the past back? And Allie and Bryce kind of rally around her to help her. There is a shocking reveal at the end that, like, Karina was like, what? No, what? And I felt exactly how Karina felt. I was so hooked on this book. I could not wait to read her next one. Then another romantic suspense is Submerged by Danny Petrie. This released in 2012. It is book 1 of her Alaskan Courage series. And I'm just going to read some of the summary to you. A sabotaged plane, 2 dead deepwater divers, 1 single clue. Bailey vowed to never Let's try that again. Bailey vowed never to set foot in Yancey, Alaska again. She has a past and a reputation, and Yancey is a town that does not forget. She's returned only to bury a loved one killed in the plane crash, but then dark evidence emerges and Bailey's own expertise becomes invaluable for the case. Cole can face dangerous rescue dives. He can face the fear a murderer may be threatening his town. But facing the reality of Bailey's reappearance is a tougher challenge. She broke his heart, but doesn't seem to be the same girl who left Yancey 10 years ago. And he's not the same guy she left behind. Racing against the clock and a rising body count, Bailey and Cole must move beyond the hurts of their past to work together until the truth of what is hidden in the depths finally surfaces. I really enjoyed this introduction to the McKenna family, who is Cole's family. This is not my favorite of the series, but I think you really need to read it to get to know kind of the characters and carry on, because the series just keeps getting better, honestly. Then another romantic suspense is Border Breach by Darlene L. Turner. This one released in 2020. And when drugs are smuggled across the border, it's their duty to stop the culprits at any cost. Forming a joint task force, Canada Border Officer Kaylin and Police Constable Hudson have one objective: take down a drug smuggling ring that is trying to sell a new lethal product. But when the smugglers come after Kaylin and Hudson, their mission becomes more than just a job. Can they live long enough to solve the case? I was so hooked on this book, and I could not put it down, and I had to read more by this author, and Darlene is now an author I want to read to zero, and I'm very close to doing it. Okay, then we have another romantic suspense by Lynn H. Blackburn, and her debut book is Covert Justice. This released in 2015, and it says, Agent Undercover. When a woman drags Blake out of his wrecked car, he knows the mysterious stranger has saved his life. But more shocking than the hit and run is the news that a crime cartel has infiltrated his factory. There's a fortune to be made by tampering with the factory's product, but only if Blake is out of the way. Undercover FBI agent Heidi has two goals: catch the criminals in the act and keep Blake alive. Falling for the single dad and his adorable daughter wasn't in the plan. But everything changes when an abduction leads Heidi face to face with a killer, revealing the danger that's been hiding in plain sight all along. I, again, was so invested when I read this book and did not want to put it down. I had to know what was going to happen. And I had fallen in love with Lynn's writings in other books that I wanted to read all her books. And so I went back and read this one and was like, well, no wonder her books have taken off. Like, yeah, I highly recommend. And my favorite book of 2025 happens to be a debut book, and that is The Edge of Belonging by Amanda Cox. This came out in 2020. And I just absolutely love this. I have raved about this book so much this year, so I don't want to talk about it too much in this video, but we are following Harvey, who is a homeless man who finds an abandoned baby and starts caring for that baby. Then it goes forward a number of years, like 20 some years, and we are following that baby as a young adult. And how did they get from, like, what happened in the intervening years? And we're following the story of how it all comes together and what is happening now in that adult's life. And I love this book because we have the dual timelines. I knew part of what happened to Harvey, but then when it actually happens in the past timeline, I was bawling. Like, yeah, this one so affected me. I highly recommend, if you have not read it, give it a read. The last book I'm going to recommend is The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp by Sara Brunsvold. This released in 2022. It is a woman's fiction with a little bit of a dual timeline. We're digging into somebody's past. And so we have Mrs. Kipp, who is entering a hospice because she is not healthy, not well, and so she enters hospice care. Then we've got a journalist who is assigned to write Mrs. Kipp's obituary. And so the journalist goes and meets Mrs. Kipp. I cannot think of the journalist's name offhand, but she goes and meets Mrs. Kipp and gets to know a bit of her story. And so we're following Mrs. Kipp in like the present day timeline and also getting to know her past. This was such a touching novel. Even though Mrs. Kipp is struggling health-wise, she's determined to help those around her, and one character in particular we see her like just befriending and sitting with. And yeah, this was a tough read because of the topic of hospice care, because it hit home sitting by my dad's bedside. But either way, like, it's such a sweet read and really enlightening. Like, I just, highly recommend. Okay, now the 6 books that are possibilities for me to read. And some are a little bit higher on the list than others for reasons, and I will tell you why. The first book is For Such a Time by Kate Breslin. This is historical fiction, and it was released in 2014. This is pretty high on my list because this is a 26 and 26 book for me. And it says, in 1944, Hadassah feels abandoned by God when she is saved from a firing squad, only to be handed over to a new enemy. Pressed into service by the SS commandant, Colonel Ark Van Smit, at the transit camp of something in Czechoslovakia, her Aryan-like looks allow her to hide behind the false identity of Stella. However, to maintain her cover as Von Smith's secretary, she is forced to stand by as her own people are sent to Auschwitz. Wow, I can't say that today. Suspecting her employer is a man of hidden depths, Stella appeals to him on behalf of those in the camp. Aries' intelligence gives her hope, even as she risks discovery with every attempt to hide the prisoners. When her bravery brings her to the point of ultimate sacrifice, she faces an excruciating choice. God may have brought her to the camp for such a time, but how can she save her people when she cannot save herself? This sounds like it is going to be heart-wrenching, but I've enjoyed a few of Kate's books in the past, and as I said, it's on my 26 and 26 list, so I will be reading it at some point. So this just March maybe seems like the time. Another book that is on my 26 and 26 list, so a very high possibility for March, is A Cry from the Dust by Carrie Stuart Parks. This is book 1 of the Gwen Macy series. It released in 2014, and it is considered suspense. And it says, in the shadows of the Mormon Church, a 19th century conspiracy is about to be shattered by a 21st century forensic artist. In 1857, a wagon train in Utah was assaulted by a group of militant Mormons calling themselves the Avenging Angels. 140 people were murdered, including unarmed men, women, and children. The Mountain Meadows Massacre remains controversial to this day, but the truth may be written on the skulls of the victims. When renowned forensic artist Gwen is recruited to reconstruct the faces of recently unearthed victims at Mountain Meadows, she isn't expecting more than an interesting gig and a break from her own hectic life. But when Gwen stumbles on the ritualized murder of a young college student, her work on the massacre takes on a terrifying new aspect, and research quickly becomes a race against a modern-day fundamentalist terror. As evidence of a cover-up mounts, a cover-up spanning the entire history of the Mormon Church, Gwen finds herself in the crosshairs of a secret society bent on fulfilling prophecy and revenging old wrongs. Can a forensic artist reconstruct 2 centuries of suppressed history before it repeats itself? So I've heard cults. I've heard it can be a bit dark. We will see what happens. Okay, the next 2 are because they are authors that are on my authors to zero list, so I need to go back and read their debut novels. The first one is The Planter's Daughter by Michelle Shocklee. This is a historical romance. It is book 1 in her duology, The Women of Rose Hill. It came out in 2017, and it says, Adela Rose Ellis knows her father has plans for her future, but she longs for the freedom to forge her own destiny. When the son of Luther Ellis, longtime friend, arrives on the plantation to work as a new overseer, Adela can't help but fall for his charm and captivating hazel eyes. But a surprise betrothal wow, to an older man, followed by a devastating revelation, forces Adela to choose the path that will save her family's future or endanger the lives of the people most dear to her heart. Seth never wanted to be an overseer. After a runaway slave shot him, ending his career as a Texas Ranger and leaving him with a painful limp, a job on the plantation owned by his father's friend is just what he needs to bide his time before heading to Oregon, where a man can start over. What he hadn't bargained on was falling in love with the planter's daughter, or finding that everything he once believed about Negroes wasn't true. Amid secrets unraveling and the hatching of a dangerous plan, Seth must become the very thing he spent the past 4 years chasing an outlaw. What? I don't know what that last sentence meant. Seth must become the very thing he'd spent the past 4 years chasing an outlaw. That doesn't make sense, but that's okay, whatever. So he is a former Texas Ranger who can't work as a Texas Ranger. She is the plantation's daughter. We'll see what happens. Then we have Above the Fold by Rachel Scott McDaniel. This one released in 2019. Can she nab a headline without losing her heart? Elisa may be confined behind a secretarial desk, but her heart is out in the open world, landing the big story that'll place her father's struggling newspaper back on top. When a millionaire inventor is murdered, she finally convinces her hesitant father to give her the break she's been dreaming of. But there's a catch. To get her article above the fold, she must compete for it. Her coverage of the story must outshine her opponents. To her dismay, the rival is none other than Cole Parker, a high-profile journalist and Elsa's former flame. Losing his prestigious job at the New York Dispatch is shameful enough, but the reason behind his termination almost killed him. When his former employer gives him a redemptive opportunity in Pittsburgh, all Cole can think of is procuring a second chance with Elsa. The crazy contest her father invents keeps Cole near her, but she regards him as an enemy, both to her dreams and her heart. Can Cole convince Elisa he's no longer the man who abandoned her years ago, or will their love remain old news? Then we have Snow on the Tulips by Liz Tolsma. This is her debut from 2013. A stranger's life hangs in the balance, but to save him is to risk everything. The war is drawing to a close, but the Nazis still occupy part of the Netherlands. After the losses she's endured, war widow Cornelia is only a shadow of the woman she once was. She fights now to protect her younger brother Joanne, who lives in hiding. When he brings Gerrit, a wounded Dutch resistance member, to Cornelia's doorstep, their lives are forever altered. Although scared of the consequences of harboring a wanted man, Cornelia's faith won't let him turn him out. What is going to happen? So the last book I'm going to mention is a book I've been interested in for a while. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I haven't read it. And that is A Noble Masquerade by Kristi Ann Hunter. This came out in 2015. It is a historical romance. It is book one of the series called Hawthorne House. And it says, Lady Miranda Hawthorne acts every inch a lady, but inside she longs to be bold and carefree. Entering her 4th season and approaching spinsterhood in the eyes of society, she pours her innermost feelings out not in a diary, but in letters to her brother's old school friend, a duke, with no intention of ever sending those private thoughts to a man she's heard stories about but never actually met. Meanwhile, she finds herself intrigued by Marlowe, her brother's new valet, and although she may wish to break free of the structures that bind her, falling in love with the servant is more of a rebellion than she planned. So what is going to happen there? I'm intrigued. So those are the 12 books that I would recommend for you, and the 6 books that I am thinking about adding to my TBR in March. Have you read any of the books that are possibilities for me? And is there one that I should prioritize over the others? Or what books are you thinking about reading if you are participating in my Christian fiction bingo for the year? I would love to chat in the comments below. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you will stay tuned for future videos. Have a great day. Bye.